I started with a base wig from a UK store called WeWig. This wig was locally sourced, has heat-resistant fibres, good fibre density, accurate colour and sufficient length. The wig has no skin top, which allows me to part the wig in any direction at any point on the crown. I like to use a range of sources for my references. In this case, I use screenshots from the anime, figures, other cosplayers, and references to historical figures. The undercut. Start by pinning the wig symmetrically to your wig head. I use a canvas wig head as it's closer in size to a human head than most polystyrene heads. I use the ear tabs of the wig and the seam lines of the wig head to ensure the wig is aligned evenly. So to start with, we're going to separate the top hair from the back and sides, and then we can focus on the undercut. So when deciding on the position of the undercut, where should we place our part line? As Joseph has very voluminous top hair, I placed my part line just below the round of the head, though still plenty high enough to be able to comfortably fit a bandana. The pointer end of a teasing brush is fab for sectioning, and with wigs you can conveniently follow the track lines to make sure your disconnect line is level. Clip that top hair securely out of the way. Next we want to section away the sideburns. It's important to note that with wigs, that the ear tabs should sit over the tops of the ears. The sideburns therefore need to sit in front of the ear tabs. I like to select hair for the sideburns by sectioning in a diagonal line from the disconnect line to the most forward point of the ear tab. Now it's time to pick up the scissors. Working a small section of hair at a time, I like to hold the hair out at a right angle to the slope of the wig head and cut upwards. I razor the hair by sliding the scissors up and down the length of the hair, slightly opening and closing the scissors, and cutting the fibres as the scissors close on the upward motion. This technique produces a cut with variegated lengths which blend together more cleanly than a blunt cut would. As an estimate of length, for Joseph I cut the fibres so they were 1 to 2 inches long. You can go approximately as short as the distance between two tracks on the wig without risking revealing the wig cap. So if you want to go really short, you'd need to sew additional wefts into the wig. In the interest of reducing waste, I set aside the offcuts of the wig in a neat pile so that I can use them for future wigs. The bottom part of the back of the wig for Joseph I left longer, however, as I wanted to style it into a wave. Using this self-same layering technique, I also cut in the sideburns to length at this point. The ideal length of the sideburns will vary from wearer to wearer and from character to character. From my planning stage of styling this wig, I have decided that my Joseph wig is going to have a whirl on the forward left-hand side of the wig. It's left, not the person facing it. I will style all the hair with this point in mind to create a logical pattern to the shape of the style. With that in mind, at this stage I have parted the wig on the left, right if you're facing the wig head, approximately lining up the part with the centre of the wearer's left eye. Using the same cutting motions discussed in the undercut section, I cut layers into the wig, working out from the centre of the whirl and being careful to leave sufficient length to allow for the right heavy quiffs I want to include in the wig. With the majority of the length out of the way, this is when I add some additional wefts to the wig for volume. Personally, I find it easier to weft short wigs than long wigs, hence choosing this point in the process to add the wefts. I stitched in an extra weft for every 2 or 3 wefts that were already present. I like to use a curved needle and a whip stitch, though if you prefer, you could alternatively glue in the wefts. Again, cut away any length excess from your freshly added wefts. Texturizing. By adding texture to the wig becomes easier to spike in the next phase. I've covered this technique in previous videos. Essentially, it involves using straighteners to superheat the hair and then backcombing the root of the heated fibres. As this is a synthetic wig, the heat slightly melts the plastic, allowing it to be trained into a new shape. In this case, the new shape is backcombed frizz. That frizz will form a scaffold which will support the future spikes. Remember when I left the lower back of the wig a little longer than the rest of the undercut to create a wave? I use a length of cotton twill strap pinned to the wig head to hold the base of the wave tight to the wig head, whilst I add volume to the hair that will form the body of the wave. Repeat this texturizing technique across the entire surface of the wig, and then, once done, gently brush out the mess. The wig will now seem huge. Once again, I part the wig into position with the whirl over the left eye and cut in any extra layers I feel are now necessary. At this point there is no product in the wig, and yet you can already see how well it holds up against gravity. When it comes to adding spikes, longer spikes, narrow spikes, and more sideways pointing spikes are the most structurally unsound, and of course Joseph has spikes with all three of these features. By layering, we reduce the weight at the tips of the spikes, so there'll be less drag. Take your straighteners in hand again, and you can tame out a little of the frizz from the sections of the wig that will be visible as you proceed to style. Again, keep in mind the whirl placement. I prefer to run the straighteners through the wig swiftly and use multiple passes rather than heating more slowly and risking straightening away all the texture that's giving me the lift. The aim is to keep the volume of the frizz, but also to hide the frizz that's underneath, to create this smooth surface facade. Once I'm happy with the soft shape of the wig, it's time to crack out the styling products and add a bit more definition. At the moment, my favourite products are got to be spiking glue for the tips of the spikes and got to be glued hairspray for the length of the spike. I use the pointed end of my teasing brush to separate sections of hair that I want to turn into individual spikes. I like to test the tips of my spikes to make sure they're not going to be too chunky once I've added product. If I feel they do have too much volume, then I like to cut into the hair parallel to the fibres to thin the hair at the tip. If necessary, I use a little heat from straighteners to shape the spikes while I'm working on them. Once I'm happy, I seal the tip of the spike with spiking glue. I don't like waiting for the spiking glue to dry because it can take a while and I want to continue working, so I tend to use my straighteners again at this point to pinch the tip. Again, it's better to use the heat in short bursts, and then if needed use multiple passes rather than one long hold, so as not to destroy the texture of the style. For Joseph, I'm creating layers of spikes that seem to crash across his head like a wave, spiralling out from the whirl. Longer spikes will benefit from a light coating of hairspray to tame them. You want enough product for hold, but not so much that the fibres are clumpy and crunchy. It is absolutely okay to brush out and reshape spikes over and over again. So if you aren't happy with the shape, or if you used a bit too much product and the fibres look crunchy, then go ahead and brush the spike out. Just be patient and gentle so as not to thin the wig by pulling out fibres or disturbing nearby spikes or the central scaffold of texture until you can brush through the section of hair you're trying to work with easily. The texture of your fibres after you've used product might feel a little different, but that product can actually help and make your next attempts at shaping your spike more stable. Finishing touches. The purpose of this stage is to create a cleaner finish and to more securely set the style. I use a handheld garment steamer and a brush to smooth out the surface of the spikes. The steamer creates a moist and more gentle heat than the straighteners. At times we want this heat to penetrate the wig and set the fibres in the depths of the wig, whilst at other times, like when smoothing surface hairs, we only want the heat to penetrate the very surface of the wig. For this, I keep the steamer moving so as not to overheat the spikes and cause its internal structure to destabilise and the spike to collapse. The steamer is also great for training sideburns and the undercut into a tidy finish. If you do use too much heat and moisture and the spike drops, you may be able to save it by reapplying heat and holding the spike in place until the fibres set back into position. If necessary though, it's okay to just brush out the spike, backcomb a little and reform it.